Welcome to my channel. My name is Groovy Florals, and this may be my first video on here. Alright, I would like to have a conversation on creativity. This is gonna be a very unfiltered, raw conversation, and I'm just gonna be sharing my thoughts. Alrighty, so let me lighten the mood. Alright, so here's my jacket. Outfit check, of course. Jewelry. I made this colorful piece right here. More jewelry. Hair. Thrifted. I have some Hollister jeans on. They're like low rise and baggy, you know. So let's clear the air. I feel like if you have a superiority complex, so when it comes to sharing your art and ideas, you'll have missed the entire point of what it means to be creative. Now, the big why is featured in the video. So without further ado, let's hop on in. Any point if you want to hear more of my opinions, subscribe down below. Let's start. In general, I feel like we can all clarify that life is creation, okay? Some people have not tapped into their own creativity, or not even just tapped into it. I feel like everyone has tapped into their creativity. That's the process of being human. That's the process of being alive. Animals, non-humans have tapped into their own creativity. Trees have. We just don't understand it because we're not in their own perspective. Anyways, so some people are not aware of the ways they tap into their creativity because society has conditioned us to adopt a capitalistic mentality that kills that desire of exploration. Okay? Ooh, that's a lot to say. Anyways, we feel like creativity is like a narrow box. I reject that. I kind of want to reject the concept of calling yourself a creative, because I feel like everyone's a creative. I consider myself to be an interdisciplinary artist. That's my choice. That's my choice of words. Yeah, it's a mouthful. But yeah, I do a lot. Jack of all trades type of thing. Just a little bit of an introduction on my own. I paint, I draw. I explore with other mediums of art. I crochet a little bit. I like photography. I like fashion. What else do I do? I play the violin. I'm an explorer of all sorts, if you will. So, interdisciplinary artist is an easy way to put things into perspective, okay? So, I believe that none of us are above anybody else because we have learned earlier on to reject the unnatural structures boxing us in since birth, okay? Now, by those unnatural structures, I'm sorry I'm on a tangent, I'm referring to the concepts behind weirdness and normalcy, okay? Sorry, my thoughts are a little bit scatterbrained. Follow along, if you will, okay? So, I feel like as creatives, we all tend to fall into this thought process of, we reject the concept of being considered normal. We're comfortable with ourselves to the point where we're okay with being labeled as weird. But in general, weirdness and normalcy are constructs that only have existed since the conception of capitalism, at least in my opinion. Now, this is not research. This is coming from my own thoughts, which have been kind of influenced through the grand schemes in nature of other people's perspectives that I may have adopted and heard from, read from. Basically what I'm saying is there's no narrow source that I can source down for this, okay? Now, the concept of weirdness on its own, it's basically we consider, I guess a colloquial definition for it would be we consider weirdness to be a diversion from normalcy. But normalcy on its own is a performance that we use for social survival skills, okay? You know what I mean? When we're younger, when we're in high school, middle school, grade school, we feel a lot of kids feel inclined to buy the certain brand name clothing options. You know what I mean? There again, that's narrowing yourself down. You feel like you have to restrict yourself to commodities, high fashion commodities on its own, or popular commodities. So when you're like creative, you do kind of get isolated and subjugated, socially subjugated, for like deciding you want to start exploring your own individuality on its own. Now, I don't think individuality is totally a bad thing. Individuality is good when it comes to learning how to express yourself, but we need to have that balance between collective efforts and recognizing each other as like recognizing each other and working together communally rather than having a superiority complex. Okay, so my next point kind of draws back into that superiority complex. I'd say if you have a superiority complex when it comes to sharing your art and ideas, you have missed the entire point of what it means to be creative. Okay, so by my own definition that has been influenced through the grand schemes of communication through other people, whether I'm talking to others, reading up, my colloquial definition, I believe that we are all creative because the process of creating is communication. I believe creating is an inexplicable communication. It's intuitive, greater than we can conceptualize. Hence why we put it in art or we share it with our words. Poetry, song, prose, if you will. Shoot, writing your diary, that's creation on its own. You're conceptualizing things that have happened around you, but you're just pouring things out, okay? Now, or whatever your medium of practice may be, let's get out of the creative field. By creative field, let's get out of the quote unquote traditional artistic mediums, okay? Repairing cars, mechanics, engineers, splitting cells in a lab, doctors, all of that. You know what I mean? Those are creative paths on their own. Are they typically labeled as such? No. That's because creativity has been boxed in. Then again, I believe that we need to give our flowers to all career paths in general. I mean, yeah, I feel like, you know what I mean, traditional art paths, at least within the past few hundreds of years, have been kind of kicked in the face and made fun of, mostly because of capitalism, and they're not high paying, if you will, because of there's just a lot of, how do I say it, there's a lot of competition in those career paths, but I think that it's that way for everything. Okay, so going back, I just think that creativity, like I said, it's intrinsic. Now, some of us are disconnected from the definition of what it means to be creative, not by choice, but by societal conditioning, leading one to believe that creativity is a narrow box. I have mentioned creativity in the bounds of it being a narrow box so many times, but I believe that by societal conditioning, that belief that creativity is a narrow box, instead of it being an expressive practice, is what draws people away from wanting to tap in to or being aware of the ways they tap into their creativity on their own. Now, I believe that creativity is an expressive practice that flows as often as blood nourishes our bones. So often as we breathe, in other words, like, you know what I mean? The way you decide to roll out of bed is creative on its own. You know what I mean? The way you decide to write is creative. Everything is creative. I don't know. I feel like this is a regurgitated point, you know what I mean? But I think this is just my way of putting to words how I feel about creativity, and I think we as artistically inclined folks are people who tend to like acknowledge the ways we participate in art making. Like, in general, people who often make traditional forms of art, whether it be drawing, painting, dancing, singing, whatever you do, fashion design, or like creative direction, all of that. I think we need to kind of open our perspectives and not be so kind of stuck in the mud, and kind of put people down who have not really tapped into that idea that like our thought process and our philosophies on how creativity like exists in our society in general. I feel like we need to learn how to I don't like the idea of calling people average Joes. I don't like the idea of calling people like boring or so, for not necessarily like knowing how we tap into creativity on a regular basis, or not being creative. I think everyone is creative. Not to be so hippy dippy, but I believe that everybody is creative. Not everyone knows they're creative. And people who are boring or not creative, they're just conditioned and brainwashed into believing that they have to seek out commodities. And they're still performing for something, for the system, if you will. All right, thank you so much if you watched till the end of the video. If anything resonated, feel free to comment down below. If you disagree in any way, feel free to comment down below. Let's have some discourse. Let's talk about things. Anyways, yeah, if you feel inclined to, you can subscribe down below. Until then, see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.